What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, Glenn, I reckon it's time for a new ad.
Do you reckon? We just went 14 months with the old one.
We don't even have sponsors anymore, so it probably was a good thing to take it down.
I think they just got so sick of it.
Yeah. So we've decided to no longer take sponsors on the show. The main reason being it comes with a level of admin that we're just not prepared to do.
Yes.
And we want to bring you good dog training information. So there's really only two things that we're interested in telling you about before you come into the show. First one being Canine Paradigm. Glenn, hit us with the details.
Thousands of customers, mainly in Australia and in the USA. We'd love to get in other places around the world, which I think will be on the list. We've got 5-star reviews to the galore. We've had skeptics, people who just don't believe products such as Canine Paradigm can do anything for their dogs. They've tried it, they've come back and they've said it works, it's made a massive change, or it's made a mild change, or it's made a change. That was one of the things Narelle was always working towards. She makes sure she does the science. She likes to peer review everything she's trying to do as much as possible. These things aren't just done by chance. She has done a lot of work, a lot of prep getting it to where it is. Extremely proud of her for all the effort that she's put behind it. Not just because she's my wife, not just because it's our business or her business, but because it works and it's done what it says it's going to do, and it's at such a great level as well. So if you're looking for something to improve the health and well-being of your dogs, you can't go past Canine Paradigm. Check it out online, caninesurgicals.com.au.
I love it. I, this year, am changing the way that I teach. I am an educator. It's what I love to do, and I've been trying to find the best way to do that. And in 2026, I'm launching a subscription service. In the past, people have had to buy my courses. You own them outright or you own them for a period. And that has been great, except that it does cut some people out because of the high price point that they can't get in on, where a subscription service allows people to come in. So if you want to check out what I'm doing this year, there's a ton of really high quality information, as well as community forums, live calls, and all that kind of stuff within the Serious Dog Business community that I've launched. There'll be links in the show notes, or you can jump onto the school platform and search Serious Dog Business. You'll find me there.
Let's just remind people that if they do want to support our show, they can head over to Patreon. We always do a wrap up at the end of the show, but Patreon keeps the lights on. If you want to support us, this is the only financial way that the Canine Paradigm gets a cash influx. Our government takes half of it, being in Australia. That's what they like to do. Nonetheless, we have exceedingly appreciated your support. People like Buffhead, the Sugar Mama, massive shout out to them because they were huge supporters of the show. And also, as I've said in my one-man band show that I did just before this, George Kittredge, loving memory of you as well. Thanks for your patronage as well.
All right, let's do it. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm in the studio today. Oh my God, I'm doing it. It's the first time
in over a year.
Yeah, that's what you told me. Yeah, over 12 months. So I'm here with my co-host, Glenn Cook, and Dr Melanie Uhde. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank
Third time
you.
on the show.
Yes,
first time in person.
Yes, yes.
So we've debated that
times.
before. Is it Uda or Uta? How do you say it?
Uhde.
Uda.
Uhde.
Yep.
Uhde.
All right.
We debated that live on the show before, and we meant to ask you, and we thought, oh, we better do it.
There was a whole debate on my last name. Yeah, it's Uhde.
Uda. Okay.
D.
Melanie.
Melanie is better, yeah. Dr. Melanie. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Mel.
Well, let's get into that, Doctor.
I didn't do 10 years of evil medical school for nothing.
Dr. Evil. So you're here doing seminars. You've just done Sydney. Next weekend is Melbourne. I only got to the second day of Sydney. Loved it. All good feedback. Everybody's having a good time at it. You tell people what you do at the seminars. Don't leave it to me.
What I do at the seminars, well, it changes depending on where I go, but ultimately I'm trying to connect the dots between applications, what people do, hands-on, whether this is with sports or their pet dog training, and the science behind it that helps them to ultimately troubleshoot better. It's not so much about here's how you train a dog, these are the steps, and more so this is what you see and here's why you might see it. So if you run into an issue, this is how you then can troubleshoot it. Mm-hmm. So that's where I try to bring the science to fill in the gaps in between and make just dog trainers, dog handlers better troubleshooter or better handlers themselves optimize what they're doing if they want to.
When I was reaching out to people and I was talking about it to them, a lot of times when we have seminars, it's a rinse and repeat sort of thing. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because there are people who do have some nice skill sets and they have a certain finesse about the way they do things. But there's been so many seminars I've been to and I thought, oh yeah, that's very similar. And almost a template of somebody else's seminar I saw as far as handling and managing goes. And a lot of people they'll do half a day or day one on learning theory, and it's the same sort of templated learning theory with a couple of little nuances here. But I think it's very good. And as I've reached out to people to talk to them, because they were sort of saying, oh, how's this going to be different? And I said, it's on psychology. It's on the building blocks of why dogs are doing what they're doing, without it being the basic learning theory that we sort of go through just to fill in half a day to get to the pragmatic, meaty side of the seminar. Again, I'm not disrespecting anybody, because sometimes it's good. And some people have a very nice way of putting it together. So if you've done a course or you've read a book and you're kind of in the wind about your knowledge in learning theory, it's nice for people to go, oh, that's right. Okay, yes, I've forgotten about that. Or had the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve process where I've started to segment down because I haven't really utilized it. And now that you've come back and you've shown me and I can see you doing it in pragmatic steps, it makes sense to me and it actually fills in a lot of my blanks. So I've had younger trainers and newer trainers that have been on their journey coming over and saying, oh, that was really good because I've got to do that. But along the way, you'll start seeing a lot of practical seminars like, oh, yeah, it's good. And you can see their flair and why they've become popular as a trainer, but it's still the building blocks of the same sort of stuff. So I like to be a little bit challenged. I like to see things a little bit differently. And I like to, especially newer and emerging science and even supportive science, which yourself and, people like Stuart Hilliard, Dr. Stuart Hilliard are doing. I think that's the sort of interest I now have in the industry, is not just watching people do the same thing that they learned off their mentor, which I've probably learned off their mentor or something like that, and then appreciated that they're doing it great and they're the new blood in the territory. But also this new information and what is new information and what we can learn as further studies about our dogs, which is what I liked about your seminar. Subsequently, as Pat mentioned, the feedback was great. People were saying the same sort of thing. They said, this is nice because I'm not so much interested in the sport side, or I'm interested in the behavioral side, or I'm interested in the reactivity side. And this has sort of filled in a few gaps that I wouldn't have normally got, because these people are more interested in the sport side or fixing a dog not biting a grip well or anything like that, which they've loved and I love. It's exciting stuff, but it's a lot of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a bunch of trainer friends, some that have been in the industry way longer than I have. And one of them, she said, well, she still goes to seminars, but it's like she's there for a whole weekend, 3 days, and she just basically hopes for one little thing that she hasn't heard yet, or that is new to her that she can take away, and it might be totally worth it, and it's worth it for her, but it doesn't always happen either. So because you kind of hear a lot of the same things just with different words.
Well, that's happening a little bit less and less now because of the internet. Like, we used to travel and we used to go around to each other, and some people were doing things a certain way, and then another group of people were doing things a little bit, not a little bit, sometimes there'd be significant differences in behavior. So if you're watching people who are doing like law enforcement training and then going over to a sporting group, and then different sporting groups, like your pockets of K and PV, that didn't last very long, but that did happen. And that was interesting and fascinating. And then you were watching different Schutzen groups and so on. And you think, oh yeah, there are other ways to do this. But now you can sort of see a lot of it online. There's a lot of people doing like Pat's online course. You've got people that you can spend time online with them and learn a lot of their material there. I do say to people, and I try and encourage them, the same thing as your colleague, your friend that you're talking about before, is what you will get in a seminar is anything new that the person has like just started considering, or you get to ask them questions. So if you're watching something online, it doesn't mean you don't have access to questions, because I knew you have your school program that people can go on and talk directly to you. But sometimes people can't. They can't get hold of the person because they're not They kind of think, oh, I've done this course, just learn from the course. They're not really interested in having a secondary sort of relationship with anybody. It's just like, do the course, you should get all the information there. I love it when I can actually go and speak to somebody who I'm interested in, somebody that I'm curious about following their information, saying, we've talked about this, but this is a burning rock in my pocket right now. What's your thoughts on it? Sometimes those after hours chats you get to have, or the break chats that you get to have, or even the networking.
Happy hours.
The happy hour chats, they're gold. They're some of the best networking chats I've ever had in my life, and where I'm sitting there going, oh, holy shit. That was revolutionary in what I learned about what I need to do. And it might, again, just be that tiny little widget.
I have been thinking about something on my whole drive up here.
Oh my God.
I want to ask you a question. I've said for a while that like most dog trainers are bro science dog trainers. We only need to know enough to do it. And I think a lot of people, when they're, brought into the dog space, most of us sort of do because you've got like a natural talent with dogs, right? So, to me, I saw a military working dog. I was like, oh, I love that. I sort of had an incident go down. I was like, that's cool. I want to be involved in this. And then I start playing with dogs and like I'm immediately kind of okay with it, because I've been with dogs my whole life. And then you get a mentor and they go, do this better, do this better, do this better. So by the time for most people that they actually then go, what is operant conditioning? Like what is that? Or when they dive into, that's the surface level stuff. But when we start going into sort of more deep, we're already doing the things because we've just been like monkey see, monkey do, or like you've done some kind of mentorship with another trainer or whatever. I've found, I don't do a lot of in-home behavior stuff anymore, but I used to do tons, and I'd be in people's homes and you're sort of choosing the degree to which you explain things to them. And usually I try and get a gauge of like, what do you do? What do you do for a real job? You try and look around their house. You're sort of trying to take in like, what metaphors can I use with these people? Like what is usable? I guess my question for you, what I was thinking about is how badly have dog trainers embarrassed themselves in front of you in the past by being right in the action and completely wrong in the mechanism? Like they've explained something and like you don't have to out anyone. Like if an immediate example pops into mind, change names, right? if it's me, just nod. but like how many times have you listened, or give us an example of when you've listened to a dog trainer and you go, hey, that's good dog training. Like I see it, you're doing the thing, but you are absolutely wrong about why that is working and what's actually going on with the dog.
That's a good question. It happens all the time.
It's
but
me.
Without
it's
me. But without the trainer knowing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they don't feel embarrassed because they don't actually know that what they're saying isn't. There are like certain trends that are happening. So when dopamine became a thing.
Yes, that was what I was thinking about, right?
It's not that it's wrong. It's just then when it's being transferred to just everything, then it becomes a little bit of like, okay, well now we're kind of getting into the field where it's not that right anymore. It's not wrong, but it's not right either because there's so many more nuances, right? And that depending on kind of like buzzwords that people pick up on social media, that is being then regurgitated and put into different contexts so much so that I sometimes don't even know where to start to redirect that in the right direction. And it's on top of this, I don't know all the things either. But I can acknowledge that and can say, well, there's probably more to it and it's so nuanced, but people kind of use it then as a very, like, this is this thing with science, right? It's being used more so to just validate what you've been doing rather than directing maybe new thoughts or being more creative. And oftentimes it can validate what you're doing, but sometimes not, right? But then that part, like in the force-free community, right? That other part is then being ignored or neglected because, yeah, you can use a lot of positive reinforcement studies and the effect of dopamine and being positively reinforced and all that for resilience. It's all true. And you can obviously use that, but that's not used to, the way they use it then is to say, so everything else must be not true. And that's not the case, right? So there's still more to it. And that happens all the time. I don't have any specific examples. Maybe there have been just so many that I am just not aware of it anymore. But if something pops into my mind as we keep talking, something that you said, then I will.
Well, the dopamine one's a good one. I think that went crazy in the sort of 2000 16, 17, 18 was when people, that was the buzzword, dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Everybody was saying that. And it was especially prevalent in the Nipopo community because a lot of like, there was a teaching of like how the dopamine works, just as an understanding it enough that I think was correct. But then for sure, it just got sort of run away. And I think one of the things as well, I think you touched on it as in the seminar, but maybe more detail when I wasn't there, but like, it's not always good. You know, and I think that's one of the things that dog trainers are always like, but every problem behavior is caused by that as well, right?
Yeah.
Like not just the good stuff, like all the bad stuff is caused by that. So like this isn't a great thing. It's a thing, got to know it, but it's not like I don't want my dog surging with dopamine all the time. Like that's not possible, but also this is going to cause big headaches in the pursuit of that.
Right. And the other way is true too. Just because you're presenting a piece of food doesn't mean your dog is now exploding with dopamine either. Right. I think the same with oxytocin is another good example how in the context of build a relationship and like, you know, get lost in your dog's eyes and then they will release oxytocin and everyone will be happy for forever together. Sure, that might happen in some of the studies that started, like if you look into your dog's eyes, the dog looks back at you, there's an increase of oxytocin. That is true, but like the concentration increase is still very minimal, that it's not necessarily meaningful. When it becomes really meaningful is when female gives birth and the oxytocin is flooding her brain and body because that keeps her being, and that's the other part of oxytocin, then also protective towards outside strangers. So you don't want actually a dog to be full of oxytocin, not that we have control over, but you don't want it because that dog might also then become like everyone else outside of my immediate pack must be
a threat
because of oxytocin. I mean, so it's not always just, it's always a context that if there's something good, there might also be something bad about it, right? Dopamine can make you or a dog want to pursue something, but too much, you get a crackhead that doesn't want anything else anymore, but you might need the dog also to want something else, right? So there's always kind of like the nuances of it that get lost in those conversations.
I think what people get lost in is the fact that anything in excess creates problems. In excess of dopamine or oxytocin or noradrenaline or cortisol or serotonin or anything like that, all those sort of, anytime that sort of gets out of whack, you generally see behavioral problems or you see physical problems starting to come through. So you'll start to see health deteriorate, mental health deteriorate. And that's what people don't understand. Like they get lost in, as we were saying before, the buzzwords of it all, but they don't realize that what we're chasing is some form of effective balance. So things are utilized, but also balanced out. So we've got a dog and even a person that's clear thinking and rational rather than just maniacal. I mean, we're sport dog people for the vast majority, and a lot of people listen to this, and we like dogs that are driving, we like dogs that are enthusiastic, but I also know sport dog people who have got dogs that are just too full on all the time, and they're not really enjoying that dog. When they start admitting things, they say, look, I love how powerful the dog is, but I don't enjoy the dog because the dog's a constant pain. He's always on. He never stops. It's always a challenge. And that's because through negative reinforcement, which is another problem when it's in excess, and you were talking about that at your seminar as well. I mean, that can be wonderful and such an incredible process in training, but there's so many people who have created problem dogs through excessive negative reinforcement before because now they've got a dog that just pulls its way through everything in life because it thinks, well, that's what you wanted me to do. This is the creation that you've been trying to me. You've been building these, massive surges in dopamine. You're building these massive surges in surging ahead and pushing and being forceful because I think that's what you want. But now the dog's rewarded by it and it can't sort of live without feeling that surge of dopamine or adrenaline or whatever it's feeling at the time. And now you've got a problem dog. There was a trainer that Pat and I often remark about in some of our earlier episodes in Australia who was just trying to create strong, powerful dogs, which is great when you're trying to build drive, but it's like everything. The reason that young people and mostly young men, when they start learning to ride motorcycles, are given a very underpowered motorcycle is because when they started giving them high-powered motorcycles like 1,000 cc's. They called them widowmakers because they'd literally wrap themselves around a tree in a high-powered motorcycle.
Jeez.
And there were specific bikes that were renowned for doing that sort of thing. And it's the same thing with fucking dogs as well. Like I see people getting out there, they're in love with this fantasy of what a high-powered dog is until they get one. And then they realize, oh, I don't want this. I wanted a modified version of this, but I don't want this. And there's trainers out there who don't really give them enough guidance to show them how to increase it periodically and incrementally to get to where they want to say, all right, I think that's great for you where we are now. I think we need to cap it there because A, the dog is great. B, your handling skills aren't up to anything beyond this right now. And C, if we go any further, then you're going to have a dog that you're really going to not enjoy. And D, this dog will end up in the pound. It'll be on a euthanasia list in no time. And that's what happens to these poor fuckers. People create these monsters out of them and then they're off to euthanasia camp because people go, I didn't know this was going to happen, but we did. We can see it because they're with vastly irresponsible people who are just turning the tap on for them, but not showing them how to scale that tap, like how much water to let through the faucet. They're just saying, turn it on full, go for it. It'll be great because you can always bring it back. I'll be of agreement. I am of the belief that especially for people who are learned and are capable, that it's better to have it. What's the saying we used to say? You can always cut some off, but you can't cut some on. So it's better if you've got a little bit more that you can trim back, but that doesn't mean in excess. And this whole waffle that I've just done now is all about people who get landed in the land of in excess and then go, fuck, what am I going to do with this? And then they start doing this pilgrimage to try and find the trainer to fix their dog that's chewing them up in the kennel because they can't now manage this dog. And that to me is a sad thing. And I see a lot of that because they've just met the wrong person who has taken them down the wrong path.
But would you say, maybe both of you, the responsibility of more experienced trainers who work with these really high arousal dogs successfully because they maybe also know how to not have them at that level at home? Do you think it's not being talked a lot about how much A, work that is, and B, that it's not the coolest thing to do? Because, if you have a dog, if you're a young trainer and you want a dog like that, that idea must come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And on social media, that's the Instagrammable dogs are not the dogs that are sitting in the.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's definitely a huge part of it. I think that it's boring. I've said that for years about dog development. No one gives a shit about watching a dog get developed. Like, that's boring as hell. No one wants to see that. We want to see the end product. I want to see the big hits. I want to see the madness. I want to see things that impress me. You see it yourself. Like, as much as we consider ourselves educators and blah, 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 the education happens off of social media. The social media is hey, I exist. Here's some information. I'm good at it. Come to my website and we could do this for real. Let's jump on a call and I can actually give you detail. And as well as I do, like, if you good info on social media just gets buried. It's got to be outrageous info. It's got to be controversial info. It's got to stir something inside of you to do the job that we want it to do, get people off social media and onto your own platform. Here's a question for you. Something, in line with what I asked initially that I know has been wrong and I've begrudgingly participated in this stupid use of terminology that I know is wrong, but it has served the purpose in the past to have people understand what I'm talking about. You met them last night. We got those two puppies. Well, there's three, but the two I'm talking about. And me and Jazz had the ones prior, Peter and Parker. And Parker, we would not often, begrudgingly agreed and explained to people that he was a very dopaminergic dog, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that isn't necessarily the right term, but he was always like, what's next? And as a young dog, his grip was chewy. He learned to out fast because it was progress, like he wanted to do more things. And in teaching him any kind of skill, you had to be very careful that you taught it at the kind of right rate and then put a cap on it because he would just keep wanting to add criteria. Like, he was always, what's next? What's next? What next? And he didn't sit around. He wanted to, like, we called him Parkour Parker. He would jump off everything that he could. He was always like, what's the next thing? Where his brother, then I know this is the wrong language, but we referred to as I agreed that he was referred to as like a serotonin-based dog in that he was much more possessive. Much more difficult to teach now. Like, not hard, but no, I have it. Why would I give it up? Like, that would only be to get it again, and I have it. So why would I do that? Whereas his brother's like, spit it out. Give it to me again. You saw Peter last night. He's a much more sort of stoic dog. He doesn't move excessively. He loves who he loves. He's that kind of dog that stares into your eyes. Parker stares into your eyes and then bites you to see what you do. Very fun dog, and absolutely my kind of dog. Like, I really like that dog. Jazz actually liked the other one more, like different flavor for different people. What are the better terms? Like, and do you think is that mechanism understood? Are we on the right track to say that one is more dopaminergic and the other is more serotonin-based dog? Is that even vaguely correct?
Well, I think vaguely correct, yes. But we probably never really know unless we actually measure what's happening in the brain or even the baseline. The way to think about, and I guess that's where the term came from, dopaminergic, or like having a lot of dopamine, is just very goal oriented, very driven outwardly. When we talk about dopamine, we talk about not something that is here, but something that's in the future that we're thriving towards, right? And there are people who are like that, right? And then there are people who are very content with what they have in the moment. So serotonin and dopamine, they work in the opposite direction. And yes, when we, for example, give a dog a lot of SSRIs and dopamine is being increased, they tend to lose motivation to change their status quo and work for something, which makes that training harder, right? Because training is all about work towards something and show the behavior, and that's how we modulate the behavior. And if a dog that is like, I'm just here and I don't have a lot of effort to give to achieve something else because I'm just happy with what I have in that moment, which, might relate to some resource guarding. I think it's fair to say serotonergic driven, but obviously we don't know for sure. And I think there are, if you then go take it like a level further, how can that even happen? Clearly genetics, because they're siblings or littermates. The activity of certain brain circuits and how they all interact is a genetic thing. So just by different volume of the reward system might mean that there is a lot more dopamine happening in terms of like the threshold. It's easy to excite a dog. And that might just purely because some areas in the brain might be more active than others. And serotonin and dopamine are being released or produced in a very similar area of the brain. So it makes it even more complicated and just shows that it's not just because of that. It's like an interaction of everything that can happen. That is then the outcome of like one or the other dog. Yeah. If that helps.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, it's handy to know that we're not totally wrong. But like I say, like it's really observable. And people, I didn't make up these terms. I've heard them from other people, and then I've heard it and like, oh, I know that's not right, but it does accurately, like it explains it in a way where it does the job as a meme to get the information across.
If I had to draw a kid's textbook and wanted to explain what dopamine and serotonin is, and that kids also love dogs, I would use that example.
Yeah,
like I would draw a dog that is just on the place bed, happy and like peace out. And then I would draw a dog that is chasing a ball and say, this is dopamine, this is serotonin. So it's not completely wrong.
Okay, perfect. So I'm at a 5-year-old level. Perfect. 5-year-old level of understanding. Perfect. Thank you. That's great to know.
Well, that's a good leader about talking about serotonin, because I don't think people really understand or talk about it much, because from my very limited knowledge on serotonin, it's more of being balanced out. I think dopamine builds you up, and serotonin, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sort of levels you back down again and gives you that inner monologue of peace. Am I right or wrong where I'm going with this?
Yeah, it's like leveling out the mood.
Yes.
You're not excessively happy, you're not excessively sad, you're just leveled out and just content.
Let's talk a little bit about this. We talk a lot about the importance of dopamine with a lot of these drivey dogs that we're working on, but what about serotonin imbalances in dogs like pet dogs and so forth that aren't getting a regulated, like some people don't have irregulated serotonin levels? Let's talk about that a little bit. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
So there have been studies that showed that dogs, a subset of aggressive dogs, have lower serotonin levels. So I think that there is something related to just not being satisfied, kind of not, just not leveled, and seeking out something that would give them that kind of balance. And I think it makes a person who is deprived of serotonin or has whatever disease or whatever that takes away serotonin, I think they're like very, very unsettled, right? Like anxious in that way, which then makes us think if we increase serotonin, we will then fix anxiety too, right? But serotonin is neither is dopamine. None of these neurotransmitters have functions per se. That's why it's half right and half wrong. They don't have functions. Dopamine can do one thing. In terms of reward, dopamine can also prevent you from not moving correctly. Like in the seminar, I talked about Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease has to do with the imbalance of dopamine.
Right.
And it's the same dopamine that also makes a dog wanting to chase a ball or makes us getting addicted to cocaine. It's just acting in a different part of the brain. So there are messengers between neurons that sit next to each other, and depending on where they're in the brain, that message will be conveyed through dopamine. And the same with serotonin. So we have serotonin that regulates mood. Serotonin also regulates appetite. So dogs on SSRIs, they tend to be not as hungry, which also makes it harder to train them in addition to that, and other things. So it sends the message depending on where it is being released or not released. And if it's in the right area, and especially for mood and in the context of that anxiety, now what scientists think more so than a dysregulation of serotonin, it's a dysregulation of neural circuits. So neurons don't talk to each other as effectively in the very particular brain area. And I think in 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, what's going to happen to treat depression and anxiety is they're going to put some probes in the brain or whatever, and they specifically find the brain area and kind of activate that brain area through electrodes or whatever to treat the symptoms of anxiety and depression, rather than flooding the brain with something that might have side effects too.
That'd be cool.
I think that's going to happen.
Like a neural link kind of thing? Is that, yeah.
Yes.
It's always been and it's not really a learned fascination, but it's a fascination of somewhat ignorance. But people that I've spoken to who have been on SSRIs themselves to try and correct some sort of imbalance, usually depression related, had to go through so many variations of the tablet that they were taking because of...
And dosage.
Yeah. Because of the side effects. And even sometimes it could be affected by diet and all sorts of things. So they'd be getting these massive variations and massive swings. Sometimes people who had some very severe depressive results, resulting in, I guess you have to say, unaliving yourself and so forth to use safe words these days.
Teenager language.
Well, yeah. Look, I don't want to trigger people on our podcast, but people I know who have been in those sort of cases before where they have been suicidal and they've been having some dark and sinister thoughts going through their head. Some of the SSRIs have amplified it, like they've actually made it worse. And they're people that I know who have talked to me, and there's people that I know who have unfortunately followed through with those sort of things while they've been on SSRIs. You're right in what you're saying, because even though I don't have a vast experience personally myself, I know a lot of people that I've been interested in hearing their story and hearing their journey and the trials and tribulations they've sort of gone through themselves to go through with it. So it's always a concern of mine when we're just blasting dogs away with these, because we can't talk to dogs the same way we've been able to talk to people. Like we can say to people, how are you feeling now that you've been taking this medication? And I'll say, I either feel better or I feel far worse. And we can have that conversation. With dogs, we have to wait for behavior to analyze, like, I wonder how they're feeling. And you're looking at them and there's this sort of sitting there drooling into a puddle at their feet. And you're saying, well, they're not doing the behavior anymore, so they must be better. Like there must be an improvement. Where other people look at that and go, that's not even my dog. It's like my dog is a husk now. Like he doesn't even exist the same way, which they've been incredibly horrified with when they see that actual sort of behavior. I can't wait for that day where science has progressed to the point where maybe it's assisted by AI, that it's giving people more definitive questions rather than people's egos being stroked or pharmaceutical companies getting away with monstrous behaviors just to satisfy shareholders that they're selling their product hand over fist, that there is some sort of care benefit to this at the end of the day, where they look at it from an individual's perspective with individual DNA and different brainwave patterns to say, you need something slightly different than your mate over the road there because it's just not working for your brain behavior.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
So one, with the dogs, I'm actually more concerned about the dogs, not that they have on such a high level that they can barely enjoy life anymore. I think a lot of people at some point, they recognize that's not my dog anymore and do something about it. But I think the vast majority is somewhere in between. They're for years on some moderate level of trazodone and SSRIs. And what's happened is the owners think it helps, but are not really sure anymore because it's been so long. And they still have problems though. But then they're worried to take the dog off of medication, that then the problems get even worse again. So now they're probably stuffing the dog with the medications without having actually clear changes in the behavior, just being very worried to take them off. And doing a little bit unrelated, but still related, during my time at Columbia University, we had a project with the University of Baltimore. And we would actually analyze the serum and the intestinal lining stuff from patients who were depressed versus patients who were depressed and also recently committed suicide or tried to commit suicide. Unsuccessfully, fortunately. We tested, is there something else going on maybe in the gut? That's probably something for Noel to talk about. But basically what my research was about is like there is a much bigger inflammation happening in the gut as well in those more extreme depressed patients. So the gut also produces serotonin. And all these imbalances, I think, are like a result of like certain behaviors. And I think a lot of time with dogs too, we see an aggressive dog and we see an anxious dog. And I think sometimes it's like we need to look at the whole lifestyle. But the vet can't do that because the vet just sees what's in the moment rather than what happened last week. And they probably don't even know how to ask. And parents or most dog owners don't know what to pay attention to. And then we're coming down this cycle of trying to catch up with treating something that we're not even sure that we're treating it, even though it's right in front of us. Might be pain, might be the wrong diet, literally, might be, well, for me, I'm big on like, your dog is not exercised enough the right way. So yeah, I think the medication stuff is hard to break just because so much authority is put into people who might not have a full picture, like vets and vet behaviorists. And less value is given to trainers who might have a little bit non-conventional approach to helping them. And the science, again, like that kind of looks at the bigger picture is too often ignored.
Something I was thinking about as you guys were talking then, two of my friends that have raging ADD and I've doom scrolled too much as an adult ADD. Like one I went to high school with, I can attest firsthand, raging, bouncing off the walls, ADD. What's interesting is they're both multimillionaires, super successful, like killing it at life, right? Very difficult childhoods, incredible as adults. But both of them tell me on and off their meds, they are completely different people. And these are two of my closest friends that like the observation of their behavior, it would be hard for me to tell whether they're on or off their meds. But internally, they are thinking about murdering everyone or, very happy and fit in, but it's all internal. They both have the ability to filter that and act within society. Like they can mask and not get themselves locked up.
So which is the state of murderous? Is that on medication or off medication? Off.
Yeah, off.
Yeah.
Because it's agitation.
Right.
Yeah. It's something I've always thought about because like these two guys are my closest friends. One's been on the podcast. I've known them for so long and it makes me think about every dog I ever hear about being on SSRIs or anything. The behavioral changes are so minuscule, but the internal thoughts, and we can never know that of a dog, right? Like, but you could be fucking up a dog on those meds. Like you could be radically changing who they are and how they think about the world. And it could be really negative. That's one of the things that it scares me quite a bit with the idea of, and I think we sort of touched on it yesterday a little bit talking about like I'm really into the idea of consciousness and who you are and spirituality and that sort of thing. And I think that you have this idea of who you are, like I'm a good person, I make good decisions, I'm kind. And it's like, nah, the chemical situation going on with you is allowing for that. Right? Like all you have to do is make me hungry and tired and I'm a real motherfucker. Like I'm a really different person. In the mornings, I'm real sweet. Oh, look at it. Peace, love and mum beans, baby. But don't feed me all day. By 10 o'clock that night, I'll punch your head in for looking at me funny. Like it's, and so I think that's what scares me about that kind of thing with dogs is just not being able to know what's going on in the black box and no way to ask them and get that sort of felt sense. All we have is behavior.
I also think that there are nuances that can be observed if you know your dog really, really well and know where to look at. That's why I think a lot of trainers are also against it because they can see that the normal dog owner might not be able to see.
Totally.
When one of my males, Anya, who is on the neurotic side of life, we had to take her to the vet and she hasn't been seen there before. So oftentimes when I say, well, she can be difficult, she hates people, she hates dogs, they want to put her on medication to establish care in a safe way, whatever. And it's usually trazodone and gabapentin. Not directly SSRIs, but still sedative enough and, meant to keep them at bay. And with her, I was like, okay, let's try it because she can be really nasty. And I didn't want to leave such a bad impression that they're going to, bring the red flags every time I call and say Anya has to come in. So anyways, we put her on the dose that they told her the night before in the morning. And she was just as alert. And the thing with mouths is like they process. And she was just as, and I heard the text saying to the doctor, well, she's alert. She's just seems like not on medication, although she was. And me knowing her is like, she is at edge the entire time. She's up, she's alert, and she might not react. And I don't think she would have actually reacted even without, but she was a lot more at edge. There was like just a tiny little bit uptick in being nervous and vigilant about her because of the medication. And I think what happens, and there have been actually studies in humans too, what happens is, and this is a little bit woo-woo-ish.
That's my alley.
Yeah.
Hit us with it.
I know. There's something happening. There are receptors in the skin and the periphery, the body that kind of obviously sense what's going on outside. That kind of directly communicates with the blood pressure and oxygen and whatever. So basically, your body is sensing, is there danger or not happening? Is there changes in the environment in terms of temperature, whatever, right? And that information is also being transmitted to the brain. So the brain also perceives information that way and then in other ways, and then has to make sense of it and then decide, do we react? Do we run? Do we fight? Do we freeze in place? Whatever. Now the brain, because this is how the sedative works, is everything in the brain is being slowed down. You're not as fast. You're not supposed to be reacting that much, but that doesn't affect necessarily what is being sensed in the periphery. So now what happens if some signal comes and says, this is freaking weird. We don't know this person. We're in this narrow room. There's sounds I've never heard. And then they're going to come and touch me. Versus the brain saying, well, I don't know. I can't really react, right? So now you have a male who can process thoughts the way we can. That is paranoia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you have a dog that is at edge a lot more.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict and an imbalance happening between the information that is being processed. And it has been shown, this kind of what I just mentioned has been shown in humans on medication like SSRIs. So I would assume it can be similar. And if you see a dog, like I see Anya that way, in that situation, I can see how that exactly happened too. And that paranoia is then for a dog, like imagine you're on this paranoia state the entire time when you're on medication. Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
And is the mechanism by which they would overcome the sedative effect that they would adrenalize? Is that how they can push through the sedative nature of what they're taking? You'd say they've given them gabapentin or whatever. Like, I'll give you a real world example. Just on Friday, my dog had to have a procedure. So he was sedated for it. I had to go pick him up. And it's pickup time at the vet. There's 5 or 6 dogs that are having whatever they're having done. They've probably all had a similar anesthetic. I was there, I watched 3 dogs come out of the vet. Now, the vet has like a real steep staircase to go down to where they do the things. 3 half asleep, completely comatose dogs vaguely walk into the waiting room. Me and my son were kind of laughing because people want to have the big reunion with their dog and the dog's asleep on its feet, right? When it's Remy's turn to come up, I can hear the disaster. Like I can hear the carnage happening down there. I always offer, do you want me to get him? No, it'll be fine. I'm like, it's not, but okay, away you go. 2 doors away from, like, I can see where he goes. I see the vet tech lose control of him. He comes flying through the swinging door, jumps into my arms. He's a Mal. He's a dog that, like, there's no evidence that he was unconscious at any time during the day. We pay our bills. He's jumping around. He's a normal Mal. On the walk from the vet to the car, he crashed. And we get home, he was a mess. Like he fell asleep, folded in half, but he adrenalized. Like he was like, I'm out of here. I know my dad's here. And for that moment, he's like, I can do anything, and becomes normal, but then crashed hard after. And so is that the mechanism, like a high alertness? Surely that has to be sort of, you're toing and froing, right? Then you're chemically settling, like artificial chemically trying to sedate the dog. And then the dog is scared of what's happening during the sedation and then counteracts the sedation by adrenalizing itself. Like that can't be fucking healthy. Right? Like that's a bit like on a long term, for my dog, who cares, right? Like one day he has a procedure, whatever. But as a long-term thing, that has to be sort of tearing the dog in half to a degree, right?
It seems exhausting, right? I think the adrenaline part there, and it's me just making up things, but the way, like if you, for example, get into an accident and you kind of miraculously walk to you're in the middle of nowhere and you manage to walk to the next gas station even though you're bleeding almost half to death. It's obviously your adrenaline kind of keeping you alive. So that means that somehow the brain must be like communicating, like it's important to keep moving, right? Don't crash quite yet. So something is overriding something else. And I think the same way for like maybe the temperament of certain dogs, you get sedated and it's like, no. Do not.
Fight this.
Yeah, fight this for as long as you can. And if you fight it long enough because the dose is low enough, well, then you never have the sedative effect until that part that is overriding the other part also says, okay, now we are safe. And then you have a dog crashing.
Interesting you're both talking about that. It draws my mind back to the time I was reading a book called On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He was talking about there were people that had been shot in the line of duty, either as a police officer or in defence. And because of the adrenaline sort of, their body managed to secure everything and keep it in place and even pack around the wound side a little bit. But when the adrenaline wore off, then the body relaxed and they started bleeding out.
Yeah.
I found that interesting that the body is capable of doing, I know the body is capable of doing some miraculous things to keep you alive and trying to support you. But yeah, that whole coming down and crashing process, it's also amazing what happens on the other side of that as well. Like I found that a compelling read when I was reading through that. You know, like I've been in situations like that before. I remember when I was a kid, I was talking about cutting myself because I've just done that recently, but I went through a plate glass window with my arm. I was able to hold it together and run across to the doctors. And, you know, like I was quite adrenalized and I could feel, you know, my heart beating fast and everything getting quite concerning by the time I got to the doctors. And the doctor had seen me and then wrapped it up. Then I started feeling dizzy and like I was going to throw up and I was going to pass out. Like I just started going through all these different range of emotions. So, yeah, it's crazy how the brain can keep things together, but then as that effect wears off and you start to neutralize or balance out again, what happens on the slippery slope of that on the other side?
And all these mechanisms that do that, these are ancient mechanisms.
Yeah.
This is not the intelligent, developed part of the brain that we humans have that controls that. That's ancient stuff that is being preserved across mammals and different species. So, you know, and then you have a dog who can communicate it or maybe is communicating and we just ignore it and don't like.
All right. I've got one for you. I want to talk about sort of bias, confirmation bias. I sort of take a slightly different angle in you put out, you know, your info that you put out is like, hey, you guys might have misunderstood this. Like this is what we really mean here. And you do all the reading and, you know, we've talked in the show about you, not with you, that, you know, like you kind of do the heavy lifting for dum-dums like me. Cause like I can then sort of, you read the real stuff and then go, okay, well, this is how it works. And I go, cool. I can remember 2/3 of that and I'll replace a bunch of the words and add some woo and pass that on to my clients. So, but we in the dog space, we lean on Sapolsky a fair bit, you know, and have for ages. And I pretended to read Behave like everybody else, like didn't understand most of it, but endured through it and was like, yeah,
even
okay.
I didn't understand some of it. And then here comes everyone is like, I read Behave and I loved it. I'm like, really? Because
I didn't love it.
I didn't.
I didn't love it.
It's a hard read.
It was torture.
I had to read it twice and then listen to it on Audible to comprehend it. So it was 3 times I attempted to go through that book. Like everybody, the first time I'm thinking, this is beyond me.
Yeah. So we as dog trainers have, and a lot of the dopamine stuff that we quote, a lot of people, including me, we quote Sapolsky. We refer people to his YouTube video on it and blah, blah, blah. So I've for a long time held him in like a really high regard and we read Behave and we like, despite not understanding it, go, yes, that's the truth. And then he puts out a book called Determined and says that you have no free will. And I didn't like that. Right. And I remember listening to an interview with him on a podcast just before the book came out and being like, fuck you, Sapolsky. I've said you're so right. I've used you as an example of like, look, this guy knows what he's talking about and I do what he's talking about. Therefore I'm correct. And I don't fucking agree with this at all. Like this is so ideologically against the idea that I don't have free will. What the fuck is the point? Right. Like, and I've reconciled that to a degree. But I just did not want to believe it, right? I was like, fuck you, I don't like, but I can't just throw this out because you have a body of work. I mean, it's Rob Sapolsky, right? Like who am I to say that he's wrong?
How dare you?
Exactly. Tell us about a time that you've read a paper and been like, oh, fuck you. Like, fuck, this doesn't align with my own biases and now I have to confront that.
Especially by an author that you'd previously been agreeing with. Like, has that happened? Have you sort of like looked at some published works and thought, oh, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this. And then suddenly they publish something new study or something. You go, fuck.
That's a good question. I don't recall this happening in that extent. Mainly because, well, two things. I often read very new science that is super nuanced. So there aren't like super big breakthrough insights. It's just super nuanced, and it's just a little piece of the puzzle that you add.
1%ers here and there, yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily change the big picture at all. It's just oftentimes good to know stuff. So it doesn't happen with new research. And then with older research, well, it might have happened, and then I probably just chucked it over. Like, what's old research? We didn't know. But I think it does happen. It does happen, and it does challenge me. And I'm not free of confirmation bias, obviously, right? No one is. No one has the free will to be free of confirmation bias. But I think for me, how I work or how my brain works, my knee-jerk reaction is like, yeah, fuck this. I'm going to just ignore it. Or I'm just going to, say whatever my brain makes up to justify it. But I do sit on it. Like, it still bothers me that I'm disagreeing, or it bothers me that someone that I'm maybe, again, I don't have I'm not fangirling any kind of researcher per se, but if I see that's a certain university or a certain department of a certain university that I think is doing good stuff, then I'm like, that bothers me. And I sit on it, right? And I have changed my views on certain things, not so much that I changed it completely 180 degrees, but I changed the intensity of how convinced I speak about something. So I'm adding a little bit of a softer tone to, if I was to talk about dopamine, or if I was to talk about positive reinforcement or positive punishment or negative reinforcement, I started to be a lot more inclusive of other thoughts, just because I see it maybe in application of people doing good work with dogs that are doing it differently than what I would think can be done. And then the research per se, this is not a good example for totally contradictory, but I'm huge on stress inoculation. I think it's a fascinating topic. I think if I was to go into the extreme, I think as a society, we're getting too weak. Our dogs are too weak, and we all need to go out and challenge ourselves more. And as a human, I think everyone should feel once how it is to get to your limits so that you understand your dog a little bit better.
100%.
And some people don't like that at all, right? And I think I don't have to stress my dog in addition to what the world already offers. The world, the real life is already challenging enough. So I don't want to add extra stress. And I think, no, that's not true. But then I do see dogs where I can't really say they're not resilient. I can't say that they are resilient, but then it might be from a force-free trainer. And then I hear, well, they're doing sports, force-free style, or they're doing a lot of exercise. And it's like, okay, there's a certain level that I can agree with too. Research also says exercise and enrichment, natural enrichment, hiking, stuff like that can create some level of resilience, which is sure, I agree with that. I just think that's not the whole picture. But I wasn't always as open to that at the very, very beginning when I got really into the stress thing. I was like, stress inoculation is the thing. And then you research stress or resilience per se, and then a lot of studies come up on enrichment. So I kind of had to open up a little bit more about that.
That was interesting. I think I asked you during the lunch break on Sunday I asked a question in the thing about free shaping. To me, that's a really good example. That I've observed forever that you free shape a puppy, it really will change that puppy. And to understand the mechanism as you explain that, I was like, oh, right, got it. I get it. That's for sure is a place I've had to swallow my words, where we talk about that with force-free training and stuff like that. You can't strengthen, toughen the dog doing this. But you can to a degree.
To a degree, yeah.
And within a context and blah, blah, blah. There's limitations to it, but by God, it can work. Free shaping a puppy. And the amount of stuff I've done a lot of in the past, if a dog gets a weird superstition about a door or a grate or something like that, free shaping them towards it, by God, that can make a tough dog. And it will choose that difficulty in the future with no force or compulsion. And the whole point of free shaping it is that it will never put itself over threshold. So you're never going to have that. You're never going to have that moment where you're like, no, you just have to tough it out. It'll always keep itself under threshold as you're free. I've done that so many times. It works incredibly. And that's why sometimes when I've no, but you guys are doing it shit. And they're like, no, but I do that as well.
Well, while we're talking about free shaping, what's the scientific literature, or at least your understanding of it currently? When does free shaping transform into shaping? That's always been something that it keeps playing with my head all the time, because people like talking about the concept of free shaping, but when does free shaping transition to shaping?
You ask questions that are very interesting that I haven't really thought about it. So I'm like thinking about this on the spot.
Okay.
Okay.
If it's a question for another time.
No. It's a good question. I need you to tell me what you think. The way I think about, and it's kind of like one of those things that I've been obsessing a little bit over lately too, is the idea of like the repertoire of behaviors that we either allow our dogs to have or not, that are either behaviors that they can choose or behaviors that are alternative behaviors to other behaviors that we don't want them to do and want to take off the table. So with free shaping, in a way, what we're doing is we just rewarding a certain type of behavior that the dog stumbles onto.
And that we
more or
find
less.
desirable.
Right.
Yes.
Well, maybe not, but still gets rewarded for it. Maybe the dog
Well,
doesn't
you'd have
find
to
it as-
reward it for some sort of desirability. Otherwise, you wouldn't reward it.
No, what if you want to free shape something like by desirable, I mean like stepping on a touch bed. I think it's fairly neutral for a dog, not necessarily desirable, but we make it desirable through the reward, right?
Yeah.
So eventually, at that point, it's definitely free shaping, because you could walk around it, you could walk away from it, you could chew on it, whatever it is, right? So we then kind of do not reward anything. And then the dog realizes, okay, I get rewarded only if I step on it with one paw. Then I think at that point already, there's already a transitioning happening, because the dog is not stupid. The dog narrows down the option. It doesn't, for example, it's just not going to walk away at that point anymore entirely. So we're already kind of limiting all the options the dog has. The dog will still experiment, maybe, again, still picking it up rather than stepping on it. Maybe still just one paw that we at that point maybe not reward anymore. So there's a negative prediction error. The dog is like, oh shit, why did I not get rewarded right now? So then doing two paws. But now it's kind of limited in terms of the behaviors that the dog chooses. We shaped that, right? We shaped the limitation of all the other behaviors that the dog will experiment with. Because the dog will not walk out the door. The dog will not jump on the couch. The dog will not do all the other things that are not related to this object in here. So it's like, is it still free shaping? I don't know. It's like shaping in that way, but we're just specifically only rewarding one particular behavior. The dog has still the choices, let's say 5 choices instead of 10, that the dog is free to experiment with, but it's not all the choices anymore. And by rewarding one behavior, I think we automatically take away other behaviors. We're just not like luring where it's just the only option from the very beginning, right? So when does it turn into from free shaping to shaping? I don't know. I think as soon as you have a couple reps of positive reinforcement and the dog chose a behavior of the repertoire of behaviors tested, we are already kind of shaping.
Yep.
I think it's a lot. I've forever described it as being like Theseus's ship. When you replace the sails, you replace the rudder. At what point is it a new ship? Right? Like,
Right.
I think it's the same with from free shaping to luring. At what point does the level of help, understanding, turn it into one thing or the other? I think everybody probably has a different definition of that. For sure, it's a fun conversation. We've had it 100 times. But a lot of people get lost in the weeds on it. Many, many years ago, we did a Patreon episode on it, and someone contacted me and basically gave me the compliment sandwich. It was like, oh, you guys are really good. Really enjoy it. Haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about, but keep on the good work. And it was like, basically said that you think that you free shape, but you use boxes. And so that's not free shaping. That is molding or something like that. And I was like, fuck off. This is just language, and it's often exclusionary language, I think, as well sometimes. But like, it's one of the things she told me that you do is like da-da-da, and it was an acronym, and I didn't know what the fuck she was talking about. And I was like, this is just exclusionary shit. You've made up some new bullshit to cut me out and to mock me for not knowing the bullshit you made up. So I feel like that's my feel on that kind of thing. I think it's a sliding scale, and you just kind of move the scale to what's going to be helpful in that session.
The only reason I ask, because I feel that in language, and Pat and I have often said that language is important, and the fact that we actually get some sort of synchronized process on explaining things together, because there's been so many times where I have been to seminars and people will explain free shaping like it's its own thing and it's a great big module that's disattached to anything else.
But my understanding, and again, I could be wrong. I don't know. But my concept of it is when you begin something that the student has no concept of and it is free to explore, it is genuinely free shaping because it doesn't actually know at this point in time, I'm supposed to do something. It's something that you haven't really orchestrated or set up. Let's say you're out walking in your backyard with the dog and the dog does something that you think, oh, that was pretty good. I hope he does that again because I want to mark it because that would be an interesting behavior to try and build on. That to me would be genuine free shaping. But once the student has an idea of the concept, then they're looking at you like, oh, I know what we're supposed to be doing here. I'm supposed to be exploring this behavior now and then trying to run back to you to see if you'll give me something. And then eventually you will. You're going to mark me when I'm within criteria of what we're supposed to be doing. So I think that free shaping is when there is no genuine structure. And you could argue if you put a box down, the dog's had no relationship with the box before, the first couple of interactions that dog has, I would argue and say that's free shaping.
Yeah.
If you lured the dog in it and put food in it, I would say, well, that would probably muddy the waters on free shaping alone. But if the box was on the ground, the dog ran over to it and stuck its head in there out of interest, and then you marked the dog and threw food in there, I would say that first instance was free shaping. Everything that comes after that, or possibly let's say the third rep after that, I would argue personally that that's now shaping because the student has concept of what we're supposed to do here. Like, oh, I can see what we're supposed to do here. I've got a vision in my mind's eye. I think in summary, that's probably where I look at it to summarize to a point to say once it's established in your mind's eye, it's no longer free shaping, it's now shaping. Because you're interacting with your teacher, your instructor. Like you're doing a programmed event rather than it being something that just began in the wild and it stayed in the wild for a period of time. And it's usually, example of this is when I've built on something, it's usually 2 to 3 reps. And by that time, the dog is going, oh, I get this. I understand it now. And then I don't look at it as free shaping anymore. I don't look at it like this is a novel behavior that just began and sprang from something. It's now something that the student is going, oh, I know what we're doing here. And then I look at it like, yeah, you do. You're onto it. And good, because we need to build on this and improve criteria and change it from a shape to a chain behavior and build on it from here and then get to wherever we're going to go to. I think free shaping, again, to use the word novel, I think people are just using this as, oh, it's its own thing. It's this great big thing that you can stick on a mantle and everything in life is free shaping. I think it's a process to get to shaping. We start with free shaping, and sometimes we mechanically do things like Skinner to shape behavior. Like you're putting your student in a position where like everything is set up and there's no real room for error. Like there's nothing else that you could possibly do other than that process.
Flick that switch,
Yeah. But then people might say, well, the first rep is free shaping because how would they know how to do it? Because you're not actually getting their head and pushing it into it. They've got to choose to do it themselves. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be just talking through my ass. I've been accused of that many times, but these are interesting things to talk about and interesting times to talk about them.
Well, here's one for you then on language. From my background, there's certain words that are really important and they're in the circle, they have very tight meanings. As an example, the covert, undercover, low profile, and discreet. To most people thinking about military operations, that's the same shit, but they're very different things. And you have to use those words in those circles. Those words have to be used correctly because people's remit, whether you're allowed to do that, it's very important to use those words correctly. What are some words that we don't use correctly and that you go, okay?
It's kind of like the same what we had before. It's not that they're incorrect. They're just not correct either. I think a lot of times like amygdala, associating the amygdala with the fear response. Right? When we talk about fear, people talk about the amygdala. That's not really true. It's true in a certain way, but it's not the full picture. So kind of almost like any kind of brain area that people say.
That was interesting you said that because during your seminar you were saying that the amygdala acts as a carrier to another region of the brain, like it might talk to the hippocampus during that time,
right?
Which I found fascinating because I have probably used the amygdala as the fear, rage, panic area of the brain where you said it begins with the amygdala, but then it sends it to a region of the brain to, create the effect.
Right. It's an emotional hub and there's a lot of things, not just fear. It also decides not to be fearful.
Yep.
It also decides to be taking agency. And that has nothing to do with the emotion of fear, despite the fact that we don't even know what kind of emotions, feelings dogs have in the first place. That's a good example. We talked about dopamine before. What else is there? Like feelings in general. I think we got very quick. We're like, imposing feelings on dogs that we just don't know if they have. We know that we don't know. That's what we know, but we act as if we know.
Sure.
And we get lost in it. I'm doing the same with my dogs, right? And like your dogs came up and like, oh, you're happy to see me, you're my best friend, right? That's what I want them to feel, because I'm pretty sure that's what they feel.
Probably.
But we don't know,
But
right?
we don't know.
know. We just interpret the body language that we are used to see and hope that this is what they feel.
Even your point on resilience too was interesting, where you encourage people to talk about their understanding of resilience, because it is a word that has been thrown around since I got into the industry. And I think the definition that was explained to me of resilience when I first got in there was functionality under fire. I don't know if that's a correct terminology, but that was the terminology we sort of agreed that probably explained what resilience looked like, that you could be functional under duress, like you could still maintain your life, because a lot of times people would probably cross over resilience with being robust. But then what is robust as well? There's probably a better or a correct way to explain what a robust sort of dog is. People come up to me and say, what's your ambition for a dog? I will say, I want a robust dog in all fields. I want it mentally robust and physically robust. And not many times will people further question that, to the point where I have to explain it and give a definition of it. But when you started talking about the resilience one, I thought that's good, because you are asking people to explain a definition of it and collectively agree what resilience means. If we're using these words, like we said before about the importance of language and your job role ones that you have to use at work and have clear definitions of them, I think probably sometimes we should agree on what the definitions truly are and how to use them more accurately. So,
Anxious is a good word.
Yeah.
Every dog who can't settle, anxious.
yeah, but then you can get them on medication.
Yeah.
That's a good way to
meds.
transition to anxiety meds.
That's a
I think
good on-ramp.
vigilant is there are dogs that are vigilant, but they're called anxious. They're just vigilant. There are dogs that are actually anxious, and there are dogs who just like are bored. They're called anxious. So I think,
Or adrenalized. Sometimes I've seen dogs that are adrenalized, like Remy's a very adrenalized dog. If you didn't know better, you'd say, oh, he's in a state of anxiety because he's jittering and ready to go at times, but then he can be as calm as a cucumber and flipped over on his back on the couch.
yeah.
Because Pat's developed a very good work-life relationship with him, where at work he's busy and jittery and he's a Mal, and at home he looks like a Labrador.
Potato.
Yeah, but just a house potato.
So if you have a dog that is maybe the word robust, let's say you have a dog and nothing can shake that dog, like super unfazed by anything, would you say that dog is resilient?
I think so.
But what the question is, if we take that definition of like, what do you say? Something fire.
Functionality under fire.
Yeah. So, but if the dog is never
Under fire.
under fire,
Yeah.
how do you know it's resilient?
Yeah.
To give that dog a better definition, I'd probably say it has good generalization, that it's being socialized and habituated very well, and it's generalized to life very well. So it's comfortable in any environment it's placed in. And that's generally how I explain that type of dog. So even though we're talking about other terms like saying the dog is robust, and there is a cross correlation between the two of them, I mean, our ultimate goal and the ultimate goal of anybody that I know who's in dog training should be aiming for generalization of having a dog that is calm and does have good senses and can perform its work duties and is happy to do so, and nothing really bothers it in life. It goes through life and goes, I'm happy to do this, man. I like doing shit with you. I like going out and chewing people up. That's fun. I like sitting on the couch with you. That's fun. I like when the two of us are in the bedroom at night and just chilling out together and whatever. That's fun. And really, I just enjoy life. I think as a trainer, that's what I'm trying to help people do, and that's what most trainers should be doing. But again, what are the terms that we're talking about when the dog is in those states and those mind phases?
Maybe also the dog does not enjoy any of it, but just does it.
Yeah.
Because it's resilient.
Yeah.
And just like, I do it and I don't actually mind. That's a cool dog, because then you're like, okay, you're actually a good pet dog. Because
Yeah.
you just,
Go with the flow.
yes.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that's a good thought, isn't it? There's probably times that, and that probably is functionality under fire, because the dog is thinking, I'm doing this under sufferance because you like doing it. And I mean, I've got friends like that where I have to do things that they want to do, and I'm doing it under sufferance. Like I'm pretending that I like it because I'm trying to maintain the friendship, where I'm thinking, I don't really enjoy doing this. I'm kind of doing it because it comes with the friend card of life. That makes sense.
The last question I have for you,
Hmm.
we've sort of touched on this stuff in the past when you've been on. You probably, of everybody in the industry, get the most heat online from trolls. I think there's a better way to put it. You know, real names in the industry I've seen have some shit to say about you, as well as a bunch of rando dickheads, and as well some very clearly, I went through a period a couple of months ago where I read all the comments on all your stuff. I was just sort of curious about, you know, what's happening here. And I like seeing how pathetic some people's lives are, right? So usually the more, well, it makes me feel good about myself. But also, like, I am curious about it, right? In fact, one of my friends that I was talking about, the guy with raging ADD, I was him online for a period, right? Like, I was his social media person. And, you know, he would get a decent amount of trolls or just negative comments. He never cared. Like, he has a superpower of not giving a fuck and laughs kind of hysterically, like, what a stupid thing to say. Oh, yeah, that is true. I do that, right? Like, a superpower. But I would always investigate these people because that was my job. Like, why would you say that?
That's your superpower.
Yeah. Well, mine is like, I'm going to figure out how you work, right? And they were all losers that would comment that shit on his stuff. Every one of them, like to the letter, every one of them would be failed at what he was being successful at. We had some pretty good tools at that workplace. So like we could really follow people online, right? Like you can use your anonymous account all you like. I'm going to get your home address, right? Like we're going to figure out who you are. We have access to the tools to figure that out. And I would go through them and they would all be failed at doing what he was doing. And I've noticed there's people doing exactly the same to you and perhaps even from fake accounts. So like they're not overtly that, but when you follow, you can figure that shit out, you know, like you'd spend enough time clicking around, get some internet skills. So first I'll blow some smoke up your ass is that I think that not only are you the person that has received the most heat in that regard, but you also have handled it the best because what you do is I just can't be fucked dealing with those kinds of people, right? So like every now and again, inspired by you, I'll like answer, you know, like not on your stuff, but on my own. Sure, I'll be like, well, this is the answer for that. And then they come back with something and like because I'm a meathead, I immediately am like, shut the fuck up. And like I lose it and I just don't participate anymore, right? Because I'm like, your internet cowardice is affecting my real world life and I can't have that, right? Like, so I have to cut you out. But you don't, right? I mean, I'm sure you do at times. I'm sure there's times, right? I'm sure. But I'm curious, you know, how's that affected you? And how do you manage that? Is that something that you've had to work on? Have you been coached in that? Or is that just who you are? Because like it has to have weighed on you. As I say, I'm a person who I don't have that big a profile and I don't care too much about the opinions of anybody who doesn't live in my house, you know, like they're the only people that it matters. But it still fucking wears you down, man. You know, when you see that shit and you're like, oh, these dum-dums, like I can't explain this anymore simply, you know, like how do you do it? Give us a rundown.
That's a good question. It's definitely been in development. Beginning, it bothered me. It affected me. It hurt me, right? I felt bad about myself. I was questioning what's it, double guessing? No, what's the word?
Second guessing.
Yep. Double guess. All those kinds of things, right? But then you keep going and you have the right people supporting you and all that. Then you get to a phase where you ignore it. But that doesn't sit well with me either. I'm not like, I can't completely ignore it. And where I'm now, and this has been a little bit like polling my audience and seeing who's following and all that. And I do get more and more people who are wanting to transition a little bit from the force-free to being more open, at least. And these are the people that I have in mind. So basically how I'm treating now the haters is if it's really dumb, if it's like really just like you're just attacking me personally, then I ignore it. I'm just envisioning someone who is at the edge of transitioning and is reading this. That person will want to see the comments too. And it's like, okay, how do other people think about it? Because that's how you validate, is the majority in on it or not?
Yeah.
If it's something that is scientifically completely wrong, I started now to monitor that or censor that. So now I'm basically giving that person that no one ever does it, but I'm just saying it anyway. It's like I'm giving you the chance to delete your own comment because you're free to have your opinion, but this is scientifically wrong. And I don't want others to think this is real science. Then they say, well, blah, 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 blah. So I just delete the comment and then that's it. So the scientific false comments, they're just being deleted. And then everything else, when you see me comment, maybe I'm thinking is like, okay, that person asked a question from their perspective, but the ones that want to transition, they might have a similar like opinion because they may have been brainwashed or whatever. So what would I tell that person? So I'm basically just using the space to communicate to people who are open-minded about it.
It's theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like I'm writing it not to respond to that person. I'm writing it to respond to everyone else who's actually curious about a follow-up. And then after that, I drop it. And that's how it's been going. And I have a lot of people who I know are doing the dirty fight for me. I don't necessarily want to have all these nasty wars coming up in my comments either, just because I think it's just sending out so much bad juju. And there's been a time when I was like people that follow me and like fight for me is like, yeah, give it to them. And I'm like, that's right. I'm just watching this happening. But now I'm kind of like, just got to tone it down a little bit and just have either ignore it or have like really good responses. And everyone then can see that they are not actually here to learn. And then we just ignore that.
Yeah.
And I just talked to Glenn. I just said it the other day, just like a couple hours ago. I'm good with this now. Like I can put it into the place where it needs to be without me bothering the rest of my day. But if, for example, someone else comes after one of my friends, that's a whole different story. Then I'm completely losing it. And I'm going to blow up in the comment section in the nastiest way possible. So it's really just, I learned to handle that kind of criticism.
Did you have to do any like specific work for that, or you just...
No, I did not any work. I did not get any coaches. I didn't ask for any advice anywhere. I just did it.
Yeah, wow, good for you. That is resilience, right? That
is resilience.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Running ultramarathons helps.
Oh, well done. You managed to tie it all in.
Yeah. The whole loop. And it helps to have people like working with Michael Ellis and like all these people that where I'm at, right, where I see the good work happening, and this kind of helps to know that I'm not crazy. Because sometimes you do things like, am I crazy? Like, am I really crazy, right?
For sure.
Well, good cross-section over from what you mentioned before, Pat. And I know you're referring to Matt as one of those people. And what Melanie's been doing and even showing in her seminar is you're not just talking about this, like you haven't gone and cherry-picked some scientific literature to sound big. You're actually in the field, but you're going through a process where you're learning with a very well-known and established mentor, and you're showing people in your seminar like where you're making mistakes, and Michael was correcting you. Like a lot of people won't do that. They will not show that. They will not give the credibility to their teacher of, hey, this is me working with my teacher, and this is the things that I'm learning in my, my personal journey. And I'm working with a high drive dog, teaching my dog a dog sport, where there's a lot of people who will talk about all this and they don't even have a dog. They don't have a dog to talk of. And the dog they've got is a fucking potato and a disaster that they hide away from the rest of the world, or that they lie about the fact that they're using tools on the dog to train the dog. So for all these people that are out there and they're giving expert advice, where's the evidence? How are you establishing that you're some mentor to the masses when you're not even really showing exploratory work, and you're not allowing people to see when you're incorrect in something as well? That's a criticism of mine. I love to see where people are making mistakes because I want to know where I'm making the mistakes too. It's no benefit of me just saying, oh, here's my polished dog doing awesome shit. And I go, well, how did you do it? And what happened when all this, contingent behavior occurred? What am I supposed to do? I can't learn from that because I need to see what you did when the dog makes a mistake. Sometimes people will gloss over it, but online training, and this is my criticism of that, is it became more about marketing than it did about education. It was more like, hey, I'm up here for 2 or 3 hours. I just want to talk about me. That's what I want to do. It's just like, I want you to look at me. I want you to feel that I'm a bit godly and then go away and praise to me about people. Whereas I want to see people that say, hey, I make mistakes and here's a bunch of them that I can show you from. Pat did this one on Patreon where he's teaching Remy to run around.
It's like a garden circle thing.
Yeah, and he was frustrated about it because Remy made a mistake in it. And I said, oh, leave all that in. That's fucking cool. Like,
yeah. There's a part in it where he just runs off. So because he chases a bird. So because I'm mid-session, you see me just like, just go like shoulder slump forward, head down, like, oh, fuck, this is the end of this session.
But I watched it and I laughed along with him because he was frustrated about it. And I said, oh, man, that's good. Like, people need to see you being human. They need to see Remy making a mistake and like, what did you do? Did you just end the session there or how did you recover from that? That's what I need my teachers to show me is I'm human. I make mistakes. things piss me off too. And sometimes my dog makes me cry, or I want to fucking bash my head against the wall. You know, I don't know how to deal with all these big feelings, but this is how I do it. This is how I overcome it. This is how me and my dog bridge the relationship, and things get better, and we forgive and forget and laugh it off. And because of all these trials and tribulations, here we are today with all this magnificent behavior. But it took 2 years to get there. It wasn't something, it's like claymation or animation. You mentioned at the very start of this. It's boring. When you watch somebody draw a picture of something, you know, it takes them forever to do it. It's not until they finally get 1,000 frames of this picture together that we can actually see the animation take place. The rest of the stuff is just boring shit. It's just somebody drawing a slight variation on the same cartoon or the same figure that they drew before. But then finally, all that takes shape and we see it and we go, oh, that is very impressive. But they didn't see all of the painstaking, boring shit work that's not fun and it's not really marketable, because that's the necessity of building anything of value, especially when you're training a dog to do cool things and long-term behaviors such as dog sports, to do variable shaped behaviors, chained behaviors, or a multitude of different behaviors required at different sets. The point I was trying to make before is I like to see how the work commenced, and I like to see the human aspect of it, because without that, I don't feel like I can really have a true connection. I feel like I'm listening to somebody who's not telling me the entire truth. But when I see their human side, their flawed side, and all the things that they're making mistakes in, I really have true connection with that person. I feel that I'm following someone of substance and they're a good teacher because they're not afraid to be vulnerable in what they're showing. And I like the fact that you stood up there and showed Michael correcting you to do something, and you're on a journey and you explain this. Hey, I'm learning. You know, this is a young dog. We're going through some shit. That's the reality of everybody who gets in training. We're going through shit. I go through every fucking dog I get. There's a puppy that drives me crazy for a period of its life, and then all of a sudden, through all the work you're doing, you're going, hey, things are coming together. I'm enjoying this. You know, the dog gets me. For most aspects, the dog gets me and I get it. We've developed this synchronicity, but before we were butting heads. It's like you with Axel at the moment, you know, like the fun that you're going through with Axel, who is little Pat. He's a little version of Pat, and Pat and him are sort of going through this fun time together where his son is getting...
That's the paradox of time.
Yes.
You torture your parents and then you reproduce yourself into a little version of yourself that tortures you, and the cycle continues.
It comes back, yeah.
Yeah.
Send him 2-3 years to Dagestan and forget.
I think, you know, like on the trolling thing, the last thing I want to say on that is,
Fuck
again,
those guys.
No, actually the opposite. I think like what you do a really good job of is, I think that in the dog space, one of the sort of unspoken things is that we're rife with mental health problems in the dog space.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that like really weighs heavily on me is like clearly a lot of the people that do the most commenting are the most unwell. There's so often times I read the comments on yours and you always handle them correctly, and I strive to, but I usually go for the ignore, because I'm like, the last thing this fucking person needs is me putting any more fuel on their fire of unwellness. You know what I mean? Like, this is a chronically inflamed person, and the last thing they need is me to pour fuel this way, as much as I would like to. And as much as this like brush fire at my ankles is a pain in the ass, I don't need to turn this into a storm for them. And I think like you do a really good job of that, of the clearly madness you leave alone or delete or whatever. Because that to me is the biggest challenge with dealing with, it's not just force-free community. I posted a reel one time, it's somewhat strategically. It was a clip from a podcast and I was talking about punishment. I intentionally clipped it to... I didn't say anything was wrong with punishment. I just said that the issue with punishment, to use it in isolation, was that, yeah, even if the dog fully understands it, the dog now knows not to do that, but what is the dog going to do? And that was all I said in the reel. And balance trainers who didn't know me went, like, they're just as fucking crazy as well, right? Like, thought I was anti-punishment and got just as berated. Because, you know, like Facebook especially, reels on Facebook hit an audience that isn't your audience, you know, like Instagram tends to keep it fairly, this is your audience. We show it to people similar. Facebook's a bit more wild. They're like, let's get you some engagement, my friend.
You deserve it.
And show you this. I think what you do really well is like, there's clearly a lot of mental health issues in the dog space, and certain people we see flaming those fires, and it doesn't fucking help anyone doing that.
That's a good point.
It's hard, but it's true.
Yeah. I think even talking about the raging mental health issues in the dog space is enough to trigger a lot of people. Right?
They don't know it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fundamental issue is sometimes you're just not aware that you're a problem to other people because you're constantly viewing them as a problem themselves.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a very small minority of the way people think, we've all got our flaws. We've all got our skeletons in our closets. We've all got an unappeal to other people. But I mean, I remember having a conversation with somebody who was a trainer. This is a long time ago. And they were involved in our club. And I just used to look at them and think, you are a really weird little fucker. But everybody would have their own version of agreeing with that. Not agreeing with me, but having that thought of you are a weird little fucker.
Yeah.
But this person was convinced that they were the sane one and everybody else was crazy.
Yeah.
Because they had this really ostentatious way of life. And it didn't matter what you did, they would kind of look at you going, you are a really weird little fucker. That was their way of looking back at you. And you just used to think, there's nothing that I can do to really assist you with that, apart from being kind and not really creating an inflammatory response. But there were times where they just do things where I think, I'm either going to say something or I'm going to beat you with a brick, because I just can't fucking stand the way that you keep coming at me with this shitty way of thinking. But not only me, but other people in the club, because people would go, it's very hard to deal with. It's very hard to deal with. But the world is now full of those people and they're all online and they can follow you home. Before you could just, if they came down the club, you'd just say, thanks, mate, I'm not buying what you're selling. Go and play in the traffic or whatever. Mm-hmm. But now they follow you. You can't stop them. They're, like you'll open their feed and unless you're very savvy in blocking them, they will follow you around or create fake accounts and still follow you to places. I've been savaged by people online who have created fake accounts, gone after me, gone after Narelle. Ultimately, in the end, they got punished for what they did by society because they're just that shitty sort of person. But the thing is during the time that you're dealing with it, it's distressing. Like you've got to deal with this person who doesn't see themselves as a problem. They see you as the genuine problem and they don't get it. And there's nothing that you can do to make them get it. That's the hard part, I find. And you've probably had your own experience and you can probably think of one or two polarizing people which really stood out to you or more, where you're just thinking, did your mum literally stand on the microwave during pregnancy or what happened? Your questions have to be asked about this. I just don't get it.
Okay, this is what I want to finish on.
Yeah.
It's what you said at the start, talking about resilience. This is my non-dog related question. You mentioned that you think that the world is sort of in a problem of a lack of resilience. You're the boss. You're in charge. What do you change?
Oh, that's a good one.
Wow. Okay. Be very careful what I'm going to say.
Yeah, mate.
Okay. In the spirit of what I'm going through right now, I would make everyone run an ultra marathon.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Or any other triathlon or whatever, something like that. Another way kind of go through an experience of the brain or the mental and the physical state is we cannot go any further, but we have to.
Yeah, 100%. Are you familiar with a guy called Pavel Tsatsouline? Have you ever heard of him? Mm-mm. He is the Russian that westernized kettlebells. He's the guy that kind of brought them out of Russia. Has a company called Strong First, does strength and conditioning training. I'm a big fan. I've been on and off his programs many times. And he's got this book called Simple and Sinister. And it's what I do as a workout. It's just kettlebell swings and Turkish get-ups, but sort of ad nauseum. And he explains in it that the way you're meant to do this particular workout is at the end of it, you should be able to do it again. You're trying to get heavier and heavier in weights, and there's a formula to how to do that and blah, blah, blah. But you're not meant to overdo it. The sequence is meant to be, if you're hurting, you should stop. If you think there's something going wrong, you should stop. But as a result, he says, and this is what I love about it, and I think you'll enjoy it, is he says once a month you should fuck yourself up so badly just to prove yourself that you can. So that when something hurts in the workout, you're not being a pussy by stopping. Because that, to me, has always been a problem, right? Mm-hmm. When something hurts and I'm like, oh, I should stop. Then I'm like, what are you going to do? Just quit on everything in your life? You may as well just stop breathing right now. You know what I mean? Those are the thoughts that go through my head. So he says once every month or 6 weeks or something, whether it's run 50Ks or like what I tend to do is like stairs, because I've got a bad back. I can't run, but I can sprint upstairs. Is like, I'll do that till I vomit and just like till you think you're going to die and then you don't. And then you remember like, oh, it's okay to feel that way.
And then you feel shit for another couple of hours, maybe a day, but eventually you're like, okay,
yeah,
I'm
okay. I 100% agree with you. And I sort of understood that at the seminar where you talk about the ultra marathons. And to me, I can't run ultra marathon to fucking save my life. There's no way I can do 50Ks. My knees would explode before I get to the end of the driveway. But I think you got to do something, right? Like you got to push yourself to the point where you're like, I can't go any further, and then do.
Yeah.
And then hit that reserve tank and be like, oh. And to some people that might be get to the end of the driveway. Like that's enough.
Right.
But then it will be further and further and
Right.
further.
While you guys are talking about that, I was thinking on that question that you asked, Melanie, and I believe that one of the ways that I would combat that is get people to be more investigatory of their gut microbiome.
Yeah.
From the limited study that I read and all the conversations I have with Narelle and other learned people who've got any idea about it, I really think this is plaguing the world, especially places like America where they have really unhealthy and diverse dietary options. I really feel that people's gut microbiome is affecting their mental health, and therefore it's affecting what we're seeing online at the moment. I'm 56 this year, and I was talking with all the people in my general age group. We never saw people with peanut allergies at school. We never saw people with severe mental illness at school. If you had asthma, you were like a Martian.
You were the outlier.
You were the outlier of everything. And now it's rampant. It was revealed recently that the whole corruption around the food pyramid, I mean, that's fucking diabolical, that sort of shit. And the people behind that, the scientists who took money from people, this is what I've been saying to people who say, science wouldn't do that sort of thing. What a load of codswallop. There are companies that employ scientists to give them friendly outcomes. And that's the thing where I get really frustrated by this, is because when it is revealed that it was bullshit and it was a cover up and you were lied to, and the food pyramid is completely fake and it was to build grains and sugars over essential fats and proteins and so forth. Now we're seeing the collective evidence of what that's doing to people. And I really believe that that is a better way to look at it. So Narelle and I get our gut microbiomes checked, and for our dogs. And that's a field that she's very interested in. And since we've been doing things like that, we're seeing better behaviors in dogs. It's not just woo. It's not just pseudoscience. It's real. It's real. It's observable. And you can see good changes happening and taking places. It's not just get my product. It's listen to what I'm talking about, investigate it yourself, practice it. Because when I do it, when I follow Narelle's good advice and I do things to improve my gut microbiome, it fucking works. It's transformative. It changes things. It changes your mental clarity. It changes how your brain feels from being murderous in the morning to being calm. Like these things have a transitional effect in your life. It's not the only thing, but it's a big thing nonetheless.
Well, Dr. Melanie, thank you for round 3.
Thank you for having me for round 3.
Thank you for coming all the way to Australia. I enjoyed what I got to see. You're on again this weekend, or maybe this will be out. I don't know. But you're in Melbourne. How do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you? What can they buy from you? Pitch your stuff. Come on.
So first, comment on my social media stuff and leave a nice comment. Choose kindness every day. Canine Decoded is the handle for pretty much everything. I do switch more to YouTube now. So long form where I get a little bit more
Good for
time
you. That's where it's at.
to explain. Not 90 seconds and 30 seconds, whatever, reels. So follow me on YouTube. There it's actually Dr. Melanie Uhde, I think. A lot more is happening there. And then, as usual, everyone who wants to get super nerdy about everything, my Triple Helix program running 2 or 3 times a year. I usually decide this spontaneously when doors are open, but the wait list is there. And
So that's not something I can start today. That's a
No.
program that is delivered by you.
live.
Yeah.
Yes, it's live. I know I have students from all around the world. So I know Australia and the California time zone are very different, but it is so set up that you can still watch the recordings and contribute to questions and discussions, even though if you can't join live. I try to accommodate everyone that wants to join.
We had attendees at the seminar you just did that have done your Triple Helix and were over the moon about it, but even more so that they got to meet you in person and listen to some of your nuanced topics.
Yeah.
So,
It's always nice to finally meet someone in person now that we're living in a virtual world. It's like, oh yeah, you and that person. And this is how you look in 3D.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you actually have some depth to your face. And
there is something about that, isn't there? Like meeting someone face to face and actually having some real human time with them. Like Zoom's great and it's really bridged a big gap and like what we can do in the absence of being able to do those sort of things, but really having like a
Doesn't hold a candle to this.
no, not.
But I wouldn't be
you.
here without it.
Yeah,
Probably,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
wouldn't have
Yes.
found me
Yep.
without it.
Yep.
So that works. And then I'm getting more and more into canine fitness and stuff like that for, well, resilience for one, prehab, especially for sports dogs to prevent some sort of like all kinds of injuries that they have and I'm finding like using fitness conditioning, strength, endurance, all these things as a means to give your dog something else to do if you don't want to do anything like agility or you just have a yard, but you don't want to just throw the ball for fetch. But also like for reactivity stuff, I find this like just occupying the dog and something else that could both be fun for both the human and the dog. So I'm getting into that too. It's fall right now. You can't even sign up, but the next program is happening in a couple of weeks. Or the first launch of this MOVE program is happening in a couple of weeks, but it will happen later in the year again too.
That's exciting.
Okay, now I have to restart the questions of the podcast because knowing that you're into the fitness conditioning stuff, I'm curious, especially say as a form of enrichment, is there any understanding of the mechanism by which proprioception work, like making a dog do something very precisely puts them in their body and less into their mind? Because like that's what I observe, exactly that. For reactivity, give a dog a very specific task and they sort of don't have time to be reactive when I'm really trying to get this right. And similarly, like you saw, say the dog from club, the Black Shepherd last night that you see like is stretched and warmed up, like the most stable dog you ever see in your life, but also very precise in his movements and because his owner puts in that work into that because he's into fitness and stuff himself.
CrossFitter.
But also, yeah, big CrossFitter. Is that understood at all? Is there any...
I don't know if it's understood. I think it's more observed.
Yeah.
Like you said, right? Because proprioception is understood and that there is a thing, right? That you have to find a way to kind of feel literally, like for dogs in particular, 80% or 70% of their weight is going into their front paws. So they're very front loaded. And then making them understand that you can touch something and independently use your hind feet and stuff. It's like mind blowing for them. They have to really concentrate and focus, right?
And it exhausts them.
And yes. And on top of that, then doing like, you want to be really cautious with the form, but doing this with like 10 feet, having another dog do that is like, I find it better than a classic setup of bat or cat or whatever reactivity stuff that have, because there's still so much focus on the owners also being like, oh my God, my dog's going to react. But now they both kind of have to like worry about finding the touchpad. And proprioception, yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a really cool thing, underrated in like behavior work, I think. But also in general, the muscle-brain connection, just like gut-brain connection, the muscle-brain connection
Absolutely.
is crazy as well. It's like as if you give your dog medication almost if you do it right in terms of the feel-good stuff is all coming.
Yeah, for sure. Like the dog you saw me handling last night, super impulsive dog, really like he's a lot of dog. And the tighter the criteria, the happier he is. That's what I found. Like the more challenging you make it for him. And I don't mean like physically challenging, but I mean like I need you to be hyper aware of your feet and your ears and I need you to be touching here. And that's why I like put my hand out and give him another point of contact and stuff like that. He can handle himself. Whereas if you just go like, be vaguely here, he's like, I can do that and go mental at the same time.
It's like grounding them. in a way,
Yeah. I think about, like, I'm sure I'm wrong, but the way I woo-woo it is that I put them into their body so that they're too...
internally focused.
Yeah, they're too worried about what they got going on. They don't have time to think about what the fuck else is going on.
Yeah. And it applies the other way too, right? If you like, for example, have a super driven dog that is just crazy for the ball, has no idea where the hind feet are. And then you want to maybe teach the touchpad, even with the front paws on it, they kind of go through the motion, but you can they stumble on it. They have no idea what just happened, right? You kind of have to, it's like in contradiction with the arousal level, in contradiction with the dopamine driven dog, right? You have to tone it down that way. Otherwise they're not going to be able to find their proprioceptive, whatever internal, whatever connection,
Functionality.
functionality. Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, interesting. Back to the wrap up.
That's for the fourth one.
So we've done people how to get in touch with you. That's it. We've got it all, right?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you very much. I think, like I say, I think you're a very important person to
Thank
provide
you.
us protection from the crazies. I like the crazies going after you and leaving me alone.
I've just explained to her that
Thank you.
she's family now and that she's locked in. She just got a tattoo from your wife, Jen Stewart.
She's in the club. Yep.
So
The club.
Yep, she's in the club. She's in the family. So Dr. Melanie's going to be part of our posse for quite some time, which is great.
Woohoo.
But not in a bad
Hopefully.
way. Not in a,
Hopefully she's okay with that.
Bye.
yeah, hopefully she doesn't get on the plane and go, you guys were just weird little
Fucking
fuckers.
crazy.
Yeah,
Just
little
blocks you. Just waves goodbye at the airport and just blocks you as she's
Yeah.
walking away. All right. Well, that's it. Another episode, Canine Paradigm. As
Yes.
always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from. And then just go to another one. You can do that. Nobody checks. Nobody actually checks that you listen to the things you rate. You can rate anything you
What
want.
about trolls? They do. They do everything.
Yeah, you can go. You can give us a 1-star on every platform, but you should probably give us a 5-star on every platform. That
Yeah.
would be way better. It is a pain in the ass to ask people to do that, but it does make a difference,
It-
especially
it
with
absolutely
podcasts,
does,
because there's
yeah.
no other way to send a signal to the algorithm.
At Melanie's seminar, people coming up to me, like I had probably half a dozen people come up and said, oh, Narelle's products are so great, blah, 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 blah. And I said, please write her a Google review. And I said, not only does it help her, but she reads every single one of them and she appreciates it. And she snips them out and shows me and reads every single one of them to me.
Yeah.
So it's not that she just goes, oh, that's great for my business. She personally loves it, as do we, because I read our 5-star reviews as well. I
Yeah.
read all our reviews.
Yeah, the 1-stars. I check the name. I write your name on my wall in lipstick.
Yep.
In the mirror.
And then I smear it all over my own face. All right. If you want to support us, best way to do that is jump into Patreon.
Do it.
A couple bucks a month gets you a giant backlog of information as well as new stuff going forward.
It's
But
our
you can-
only financial feed. That's
Yep.
it. That's
We're-
it.
We gave up our advertising.
We've got
so we
nothing
couldn't
but-
be bothered
but
doing the
Patreon.
ads.
Yep.
But you could also get us t-shirts. You can
Yes.
get into spring, links in the show notes, get yourself a cool t-shirt.
Yep.
Always love seeing people wearing the t-shirt. Where are we at? Okay, if you want to get in touch with us, you could jump into the Facebook discussion group.
Yep.
Plenty of cool people in there. Zero trolling allowed. And if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@canineparadigm.com. Love you all. Goodbye.
Oh,